All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Technical Tuesdays. I'm your host, Maria, today. And we are going to talk about the objection response system, why people object, what to do about it, all of that good stuff. So basically, what is an objection? It's when somebody gives you a reason for not finishing the application, for not signing, for not giving you their bank account number, whatever part they're stopping you at. And here's the thing, you guys, oftentimes it may or may not be the real reason what they're giving you. Usually it's just kind of people's knee-jerk reaction. They don't want to be sold to, they don't want to, feel like they're being talked into something they don't really need. It's just an automatic thing. When people are told to make a decision, their automatic reaction is to procrastinate. So what we're going to talk about today is to kind of help you guys understand a little bit about human nature, understand why people object. And when you understand why and how, then you can figure out and understand what to do to overcome these objections. So guys, part of the thing about human nature is, knowledge breeds confidence. When somebody is learning a brand new thing, they're not very confident about it. Just like when you first learned your sales talk, you weren't very confident with it. When a prospect is just learning about supplemental insurance, they're kind of like, wait, what is this? It's sometimes people are they're not quite understanding it the way you are. So sometimes their confidence in buying can be low. And so if they're not super confident that they understand what you're doing and why they need it, that's when they object. So it's not always as obvious as them saying, I kind of don't really understand what you're talking about, so can you explain it? Usually they just give you a put off, like, oh, I got to think about it or something like that. And guys, it's important to remember that most objections are emotional. They're based on fear. Basically, it's not usually a logical reason. People might make it sound super logical, like I need to go check my budget or something. But the real reason is most of the time emotional. They're just not sold on it enough to take the chance to go purchase something they don't really understand. They usually say one thing, and oftentimes what they mean is a little bit different. So like, for example, if someone says I need to think about it, what they're not saying is I need to think about it because I'm not sold on this idea yet, or I'm not quite sure about you as a salesperson. I'm not quite sure about you as a person. I'm not sure about your company. People will say I can't afford it. What they really mean is I'm not yet convinced that this value is worth me paying that amount of money. It's not that people can't afford $20 a month or $50 a month, like some of these policies are telling you, because you see the phone in their hand, you see their nails are done, you see their expensive coffee in front of them. It's just they don't see the value in what you are showing them to be worth that amount of money in their eyes. Some people might say, I need to ask my spouse, unless I'm totally convinced about it, is what they're not saying. That's a great cop out. Most people who I train are married, and they say to me, yeah, I have to ask my spouse about a lot of things too. I totally buy that objection. And then that's the objection in the field that always stops them every time. And here's the thing, guys, sometimes you do need to ask your spouse some things, but I've seen a lot of prospects in the field who are going to go buy themselves a $15 salad at lunch without asking their spouse. If you do that a couple times a week, that adds up to a policy, and they didn't have to ask their spouse about it. So it's not always the amount of money they have to ask their spouse about. It's just they don't quite have an understanding or the confidence in themselves that they understand and see the value in what you're doing. So people might say, we have all that we need right now. What they're not saying is, we have all we need unless you can show me something that will be of great benefit and great value. So really, our response system is designed to help us and them understand their real reason for not buying. And here's the key, guys. Our rebuttals, our responses are not meant to be pushy. They're meant to be pleasant and professional, because at the end of the day, we're just asking people for a simple yes or no. And it's okay if they say no. But I hope we're all making it very clear in our demos that we're not asking people for a maybe or a think about it. So our response system is here to help them get to a yes or a no. One side of the fence or the other, doesn't matter. Either way is totally cool. So basically the basic structure of all of our rebuttals is first acknowledge the objection. Second of all, give additional information. 3, emotional close, and then 4 is close and stay closed. So when we acknowledge an objection, it's people need to feel heard. It's not just they say their objection, then we immediately just spit back out our response. We need to make them feel heard, because we've all been in a conversation with somebody where we felt like they weren't hearing us, that we're just kind of talking to thin air, and that they don't really care about us. And you're not going to buy something from that person, right? So whether their objection is true or not, whether they're giving you some flimsy, silly excuse that you can see right through or not, no one appreciates their statements being dismissed without some due regard from you as the sales professional. So just acknowledge them. Be like, okay, hey, I get that. Yeah, I can see that. I appreciate that. I know how you feel. Something like just, I hear you, before you just launch right into your response. Then step 2 is giving them additional information. People don't like to be told that they're wrong. And people also don't like to change their mind after they made up their mind, because they don't want to seem like they know what they're talking about. People are kind of stubborn sometimes. But if you give them some new information that they didn't have before, now they can kind of change their mind without saving face. So you are trying to kind of educate them so that they gain knowledge and they understand a little more about whether this is a yes or no for them. Then the number 3 part, the emotional close. Many times the prospect believes that the product's a good one, but they fail to see where it fits in with them personally, right? We've probably heard that before. Like, it's a good product, I just don't know if it's for me, right? And the emotional close helps bring the prospect in touch with the advantages of what the product would mean to them personally, them and their family. Sometimes that's the little nudge that they need to get over the line. And guys, some of you may be a little bit more like emotional decision makers. I'm a very logical decision maker, and a lot of you probably are too. So for me, that was what was tricky for me at first starting out, is I was like, well, if I make it logical to them, they'll buy it. And people are people. They don't buy things like this based off of logic, even though it seems like, to me, seems like a logical decision, right? So just understanding a little bit more about human nature and about some of the other prospects we're coming across will help you guys be empathetic to how they view the world and help you understand a little bit more about what's going through their head to help them out more. And then finally, close and stay closed. So basically, you need to close again, just saying something like going back into the application. We'll get into that in a minute, what that sounds like. But if you just kind of do the first 3 parts and don't close again, then they're still going to just think about it because you didn't bring them to the point of decision again. But it's really important to know exactly what to say, because the close has no room for just rambling on. If you're adding a bunch of extra words and kind of meatballing there in the close, it makes you look like you're not very confident or competent, and they may have some doubts about you as a salesperson. So basically, how do we do our objections, right? There are response systems designed to be used when the prospect has raised an objection or given you some kind of reason why they can't make a yes or no decision right now. Usually it's not a no, right? We like no's. If someone's like, they listen to our whole demo and they're like, definitely not. Cool, that's easy. What people usually say is a procrastination objection. I need to think about it. Financial objection, I can't afford it. Spousal objection, I need to ask my spouse, my parents, my whoever. Or of the 4th objection we sometimes get is need. Like, I just don't think I need it. We're good. We've got everything we need right now. And we don't like to think that people lie. We like to believe everything people say. We want to believe that if somebody says they can't afford it, they're being serious, or if they say they have to ask their spouse, that they're going to really ask their spouse and call us back, right? But guys, there's a reason in the buying atmosphere that we say, do you know why I asked that? Because people are so nice. They don't want to tell me no. So they'll say, do you have a card? And I can think about it and call you in a week or so. And how many of those people actually call me back? Guys, that is because that's true. I've done both ways. I've done that part in the buying atmosphere and gotten people to a yes or no. And I've skipped that part in the buying atmosphere and they've asked me for a card and I don't think anyone's ever called me back in 2 years. Maybe one person, maybe, can't remember. Nothing really stands out. So we want to believe people, right? No one wants to think that someone would say something and not do it. But you just got to understand that that's just how people work sometimes. So their objections do sound reasonable to us, right? It makes sense. But it's really important that we understand that oftentimes the first thing they say is not really the real objection. The bottom line with all objections is they're not yet to the point of believing that the product you are showing them on your iPad is of enough value to them that it would be worth the price, the money to buy it, right? So what's natural for us is to answer their objection with kind of just fencing with them a little bit. They say, I can't afford it, so you show them the base one. Or they say, I need to ask my spouse, and you tell them that they can make their own decision after the fact. Something like that. And if they say they need to think about it, you tell them you can make a decision right now. And oftentimes when someone says they need to think about it, instead we'll do is, oh, that makes sense. Let me give you some time, and I'll come back in a week, and we'll go from there. And we all know that they're going to forget everything you talked about that week, and they might even forget that you were coming. So objections are either real or a delay. A lot of times it's just kind of them stalling because they're too shy to tell you no, honestly. And think about it like this, you guys. Most people in America will go beyond their means to buy something that they really want. Like right now, credit card debt is at an all-time high in this country. You know, people are putting everything on credit cards, from groceries, which they need, to things like really nice cars or the latest phone or just luxury items that they don't need, right? People will go beyond their means if it's something they really want. So chances are, it's not that the people you're sitting down with are just super good with money, right? So we need to kind of just understand this fundamental quirk of human nature, and that will really help us understand what their objections mean and kind of how to get around them, right? But like I said, you guys, our rebuttals are not meant to be pushy. It's not just what you say, but how you say them, right? So I guess a good way to put it, what's a good way to put it? So when you read the rebuttals, if you're reading them in your head in the wrong tone of voice, it might sound kind of pushy, but we need to just know them so well that we're confident when we're making eye contact with somebody that we know exactly what to say. And we can say it slow and relaxed. If you say the rebuttals really quick, we sort of sound like a smooth talking salesman, and people don't like that. So just saying them slow, saying them relaxed. And think about it like this, you guys. If you've done a really good job building the need, and you've done a really good buying atmosphere, and the person you're talking to has told you like 12 times that they need this product, yeah, I'd be screwed if I couldn't work for 6 weeks, 6 months or longer. I don't have a backup plan. I do have all those indirect costs. I like this thing about it. I think it's affordable. I like the money back. They've told you they need it a bunch of times, and you've done a great buying atmosphere. And then at the very end, they say, oh, well, I need to think about it. Then you're doing them a disservice if you don't use the rebuttals, right? Because think about it like this, guys. At the end of the day, we're out there to protect families and help people. We don't really protect anybody if we leave them a card or a brochure and come back later and they're not there, or they forgot, or whatever. We do people a service when we get them protected and they have this plan already when something bad happens, okay? So if you've done a good buying atmosphere and building the need, you absolutely should be using at least 2 rebuttals. You know, we're trying to get them to a yes or a no. And if that's a no, that's okay. But we're not trying to leave people with a maybe, let me think about it, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just going to quickly read over how to say some of the rebuttals, just so you kind of get an idea of what the feeling is supposed to be. So let's just say, you know, I'm signing somebody up, and then I got to the part where I'm like, who's your beneficiary going to be? And they say, oh, well, I don't know if I want to sign up right now. if they say something along the lines of, I don't know, I'm not sure, do I have to sign up right now? Anything other than a definite no, I'm not going to do this right now, then that's your cue to go into a rebuttal. Don't start rambling on about this and that. Just say, hey, I totally understand how you feel. In fact, a lot of my other clients have felt the same way at first until they found out what this could mean for them and their family. So this is the Sharp family, or this is the Kleitz family, whatever claim you want to read. And they said, read the claim. And we paid them this many dollars. Not that they ever planned on using it. Obviously, no one plans on using that. It just happened. And I hope and pray nobody I talk to ever has to go through anything like that. But you never can tell, right? And hey, I mean, if all this policy did was give you the peace of mind, knowing that you can focus on getting healthy instead of just worrying about money, it'd be well worth having, wouldn't it? And most people tell me that since they get all their money back, if they don't have to use the plan, it just makes a lot more sense to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. That makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. So do you get your mail at the house or the post office? And just kind of go back to the application. And that right there, where you say, when you go back to the application part, that is the close. That is where you close and stay closed. So you could say something like, when it comes to the application, who did you want your beneficiary to be? And look down. And just don't look back up at them or say anything until they say something. Because guys, what do you do when there's an awkward silence? Usually someone's going to say something. And whoever talks first loses. You probably heard that before. So when you want them to say something, after you ask the question, just don't say anything. Let them say it. You could also use the crystal ball example. That's rebuttal number 2. So you could say, hey, let's suppose there's a crystal ball sitting right here. We could look into the future. Now, obviously, I don't know the future. Neither do you. Just say that up front because people are silly. Obviously, we don't know the future, right? But there's one of 3 things that could happen. So scenario 1, how would you feel if in 25 years, you never got cancer and you see me and this other agent coming back with a check with your name on it for this much money, just like this return of premium testimonial right here. How would you feel about your decision to get this plan? Pretty good, right? Yeah. Well, what if we looked into the crystal ball and we saw that 3 years from now, your wife got diagnosed with cancer and you decided to pick up this policy and we had paid you out $64,000, just like this testimonial right here. How would you feel about your decision to get it today? Pretty good, right? Now, of course, the crystal ball could show you that 3 years from now, your wife gets diagnosed with cancer and you decided not to pick up this policy and you blew through your savings account that you have and you do put the rest of it on a credit card and you're not working and she's not working. And how would you feel about your decision then? Kind of painting the picture for them a little bit. And then you say again, hey, obviously neither of us knows the future, but you can see the only way you lose is if you don't have the plan when you need it. That makes sense, right? So right there, guys, that was kind of more of a logical rebuttal. Only one of 3 things could happen, right? And also emotional, painting that picture, imagine this happened. Imagine this happened, getting them to kind of put themselves in that situation already. And then kind of like a last resort, you guys, it's kind of interesting in the Legacy Success Handbook, they mentioned that kind of the last resort is dropping the price down. I usually see people do that at first. When someone gives them objection, they're like, well, what if you got the base 1? We shouldn't be pushing the base 1, you guys, unless somebody says something like, I really want this, but I just cannot afford that preferred 4. Because at the end of the day, guys, we're trying to help people. And if we sell someone a base 1 policy and we never go reservice them and they get a claim for cancer and they're out for a year and they're not getting paid very much, they're probably going to be a little bit like, well, this is cool, but not that great. Sometimes you meet people in the field and they're like, oh yeah, I had an Aflac plan. It didn't pay me that much. It wasn't worth it. So we don't want to do that. And now if somebody can only afford a base 1, make sure you put them on your calendar, go back and check on them. Be like, hey, just a reminder, this is what you have. Are you still cool with those amounts? But that's kind of the last resort, guys, is dropping the price down, because usually it's not about the price. And if you look at the last couple pages of your sales talk, there's a couple one-liners you can use when people are on the fence. So, People don't get this to use it. They get it for the protection and hope they never have to use it. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. It's a win-win situation. It's not your money that qualifies you for this plan. It's your good health. And there's a good chance you'll never be in better health than you are today. It's funny. One lady told me she couldn't afford a policy. And then when she thought about it, she found out she really couldn't afford to not have this plan. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Just some things like that. And then a couple other things I wanted to talk about with you guys. We'll go into some objections you might get on the approach really quick. But before I go into the approach objections, does anybody have any questions about the rebuttals at the end of the demo? Good. All right, cool. I feel like I'm talking a lot, but that's okay. So real quick, guys, I want to just talk on when we're going business to business, some of the most common objections you probably get on the front end. So let's say you walk in, you do your approach, talking to everybody about cancer, heart attacks, accidents, talking to this person, this person, this person. And then the manager's like, oh, what is this? Kind of like Aflac? Well, guys, what are people's thoughts on Aflac, right? Some people love it and some people don't love it. We kind of want to find out who we're talking to before we answer that question. So what I like to say to folks, if they're like, oh, is this like Aflac? I'm like, well, have you ever used Aflac before? Or have you experienced that? What's been your experience with Aflac? And then if they're like, oh, we have it, we love it. Then I'm like, yeah, this is just like Aflac, but even a little better in some ways. Let me show you. Or if it's like, oh my gosh, we had that forever ago. I am never using that again. Oh my gosh, totally empathize with them. This is nothing like that. You kind of want to know what their thoughts are before you compare us to them. So if they say, yeah, we love Aflac, awesome. Yeah, they're a really great company. We actually work really well with them. We do something that's similar, doesn't interfere at all. Let me show you how it works real quick. And then just open up your iPad and start demoing them. Another quick little thing you can say is, yeah, oh my gosh, Aflac's a great company. We do things a little different than them. They do things we don't do. We do things they don't do. Let me show you the differences right here. This will make sense to you then. And if someone's seen Aflac before, give them a lot of credit. Like, oh, this will make a lot of sense to you. Keep kind of just like pumping them up like, oh, you're an expert now. You got this. And then when you sit down with somebody and they're like, oh, I already have Aflac, you just want to get some more information. Don't just brush right over it. You want to find out what they have, if at all possible. And one thing I like to do in a business is kind of a leading question, kind of leading them in the wrong direction. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. You probably have like the life, the short term, the long term, all that stuff. Yeah. They're like, oh yeah, we've got all that. I'm like, cool. We don't do any of that. So hold on to your Aflac. This is totally different. And because usually they don't even know what they have. It's funny how many times I've sat down with someone and they're like, oh yeah, I've got Colonial. Awesome. What do you have? I have no idea. Okay, cool. This is totally different than that. Whatever. A couple good questions you can ask if someone's giving you that objection is, how long have you had it for? And have you ever had to use it? Are you getting paid for your checkups every year? Like, are they utilizing the benefits? Does that cover just you, or does that cover your spouse and kids as well? Does that cover you off the job or just while you're working? Is that only while you work here? Can you take it when you retire? Just kind of try and point out some things where we might be a little bit different. If it's disability, you want to ask, does that pay you 60% of your income or something else? Does that kick in after 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or something else? And half the time, if they don't know, just be like, hey, you're the expert now. They don't know, you know. Be like, cool, let me show you how this works. This is a little different than that. Another objection that we get a lot is the corporate objection, right? How do we handle that? So what you need to kind of say on the front end is, when you're doing your approach to a corporate business, use other corporate names in the approach. So let's say I'm approaching, I don't know, Mr. Tire or something like that. I would say something like, hey, I'm in charge of talking to all the businesses in the area. We work with a lot of the businesses here, like Walmart, Lowe's, Advance Auto, O'Reilly's, all these other big businesses. So hopefully that takes the objection right out of it. And then when I sit down with them, when I'm opening up the iPad with the manager, I'll say, so what we offer is a program that pays cash directly to you or your family, totally separate from all the benefits you guys offer through Mr. Tire. This has nothing to do with corporate or payroll or HR. This is for you guys individually. So if you don't mind sharing, who's the closest person to you, and then just kind of go right into it. And then if they still give an objection later, like, oh, I need to ask my district manager if I'm allowed to have you come in and stuff like that. You could just say, hey, that's totally cool. I totally understand. You know, a lot of the other corporate businesses thought that at first until they found out that this is just an individual thing, has nothing to do with payroll. It's not like your benefits that has to go through corporate or HR. We're actually totally separate from that. We do work with a lot of other corporate locations, such as, and then just name as many as you can think of. We just wanted to get something set up for you guys. I just like to show the manager first, so you kind of see what we've been doing for all the other locations here. Not a big deal at all. Just need a quick couple minutes in front of your team. We can either do a quick staff meeting or a one-on-one, just grab them one at a time. That's kind of what we did at Walmart, or at Lowe's. They have a 9 o'clock in the morning. So we just came in and talked to them there. But which of those would make more sense for you? And just, if you're super confident that this is not a big deal, this is normal, this is what we do for all the corporate businesses, then they might be like, oh, okay, this is what we do. That's fine. And again, guys, like everything, just like your demo, it doesn't work 100% of the time, but it works a little bit better than the other ways we've tried. So try this out. I promise it works better than the alternative. Another issue we get once we're kind of past our first couple weeks and we're not going into like super low income businesses, you might hear someone say after the critical question 1, you know, how would that impact your business, or more importantly, your family financially? They might say, oh, I'd be all set. I'd be good. We're good. We can live for a couple years on our savings or whatever. So what you want to say for that is just don't skip a beat. Don't let it shock you. Just be like, cool. That's awesome. I'm so glad you have that. It sounds like you've made a lot of really smart financial decisions, kind of puff up their ego a little bit, like, you're awesome. Great job, Mr. Prospect. Everyone knows you can have a nice nest egg that you can cut in half with one accident or a cancer diagnosis. So that's exactly what this is for. There's really 2 types of people I protect. The first is the type of person that would be flipped upside down financially if they couldn't work for a month or 2. And that's not you. You've done a lot of things right. You're the second type of person who has savings and assets and has something to lose. And my guess is, just like most business owners, your nest egg is your plan for retirement. You're not planning on spending that on cancer, right? Yeah, we're not hoping to do that. And now if somebody says, nope, I'm going to spend all my money on cancer, that's what it's there for, then cool. They're probably just stubborn. You don't really need to demo them. They're not going to probably get very far anyway. Just be like, cool, not for you. This is for your employees. Let's do an enrollment. But if they're like, yeah, I kind of am hoping to retire someday, I want to go buy a house on the lake and go fishing or whatever. Yeah, that's what everybody says. That's what this is for, right? You probably would like to not work forever and have a nice lifestyle when you're older, when you're retired, spend time with your kids and your family, not be just worried about money. That's exactly what this is for. So basically that's kind of how to answer that objection. I call it too rich to care. Some people are just think that if they have a couple of months savings in the bank that they're invincible, but they're not. That could still happen. So I hope that helps you guys. We're kind of running up on time here. Does anyone have any questions about any of the objections on the approach? Are there any other objections you guys get on the approach that you have trouble with?
Hey, Maria, Grant here. So I've ran into the corporate thing twice in the last week. One, Katie and I actually had a group enrollment scheduled for yesterday at Walmart, and we're about to actually start the enrollment, and the manager walked in basically saying that we needed an authorization letter from corporate to actually sit down and speak with them. And I explained to him, hey, we work with this Walmart, all over these locations. I actually showed him a testimonial from Walmart, and he basically said, hey, this is from 2020. It's now 2023. We need something updated. Until you guys have an authorization letter from corporate, you cannot sit down with us. Of course, it could have been just the way I approached him with it and everything, but what would you do in that situation? Would you just let it slide or try to contact corporate, or what?
I wouldn't try to contact corporate. I don't know if you guys know Rob McLean. He's kind of a legend in this business. He actually lives out in Arkansas where Walmart's corporate is. And it doesn't do a lot of good to, I think he's trying to contact corporate. But I think you probably handled it as best you could, Grant. Like, I don't have a testimonial from Walmart that's as good as you could have handled it. I think that, I don't know if you set up the enrollment with that manager in the first place, or if he kind of heard about it through the grapevine and was like, oh, wait a second. Some people are just kind of rule followers, really by the book, and they let you come in. Not that it's against the rules for us to come in, but some people, it is or whatever, I don't know. But we definitely have worked with a bunch of Walmarts, so I think you probably handled that as good as you could have. And you don't want to like be fencing with people or arguing too much. But yeah, that's kind of.
Sorry, this is Casey here. I'm going to jump in on that really fast. It has been probably a year and a half ago now. I actually did reach out to corporate, and we have the permission to go in any Walmart. However, it is 100% up to the store manager. Corporate's okay with us, but the store manager has to give us the green light. They let them decide on an individual basis.
Do we have like a letter or something that we need, or is that just kind of?
We have a letter. I actually sent it to Renee last week.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, if you could post that on Boxer, that would be awesome. Thank you. I didn't know we had that.
Cool to know. Hey, Maria, I just wanted to say this is absolute flipping gold, what you've shared here today. And if anybody on here would like a little bit of, just a little bit of why behind the what, I wanted to share this with you real quick. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
So this is just a quick math on what Maria just talked about, guys. Here's the thing is, do rebuttals work all the time? Absolutely not. They don't work all the time. They work a lot of the time. If you're out there closing, doing what an average rookie does, which is closing 16, 17%, 1 out of 6. Guys, if you're doing 30 demos in a week, which we all should be doing, that's 5 sales. Okay. 5 sales a week over the course of a year will make you $70,000. Guys, that means that 5 are buying and 25 people are not. Guys, consider this. If your rebuttals only work 10% of the time, 1 out of every 10 times that you use it, 10% of 25 a week is 2.5. 2.5 is a 50% increase over the 5 that you're already selling. Okay. And this works on all levels. If you're only selling 4 a week and it works 10% of the time, now you're closing 6. If you're closing 8 a week, now you're closing 12. So when you deliver those first 2 rebuttals well, clearly, like you know the words, and you use a good testimonial like Maria did to help people save face and form a new decision based on new information, that'll work 10% of the time for you. So that takes you from 240 families a year to 360. Guys, that's the difference between 70,000 a year first year income and 105,000. That'll increase your income by 35K. So just kind of ask yourself, is today's information that Maria shared worth you taking 30 minutes every day, the next 2 weeks in the evening to rehearse and practice that and go out and use it and have it not work? It'll not work 90% of the time, but guys, that 10% of the time that it does work will be worth about $35,000 to you in new commissions and about another $8,000 to $10,000 a year in lifetime residuals. So Maria, awesome work today, and thanks so much for sharing what you did.
Absolutely. All right, guys, that's all I have for you today. Casey's going to share that letter over Voxer to us, and then you'll have it. Good to know. Hope you guys all have an awesome day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, y'all.